Welcome to the Dental School Guide podcast, your ultimate destination for all things dentistry. I'm Dr. Tanner Townsend, your guide through the complex world of dental education. Join us as we uncover the secrets of acing dental school admissions, navigating residency programs, and exploring career opportunities. Please share and enjoy. Real quick, just wanted to make all you pre-dental students out there aware of a resource. If you've ever been worried about getting into dental school or are wanting to get into that school of your dreams, then you definitely want to check out a program called Dental School Guide. In the program, we walk you through how to save money, time, and heartache when applying to dental school. There's so much fluff out there when it comes to resources for getting into school, and we are streamlining all of that. With our comprehensive digital course, expert mentorship, and personalized application review services, you'll have everything you need to stand out to admission committees. Take advantage of this amazing resource that will help you increase your chances of getting into dental school. You'll want to check out dentalschoolguide.com. Check it out. Welcome back to the Dental School Guide podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tanner Townsend, and today we have the opportunity to have Simran with us. And she is a D2 at Nova University in Florida. And so Simran, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are excited to have you on today. So, Simran, just for those of you that don't know her, we'd love for you to kind of share your story a little bit and kind of how you ended up at Nova and where you're from.
Of course. So I am a slightly non-traditional student. I graduated from the University of Florida in 2019. And then I took a few gap years because I was not sure that I wanted to do dentistry until the end of my undergraduate career. So once I graduated, I started shadowing and taking my DAT. And then COVID hit, and I did one round of applications. Unfortunately, I didn't get in anywhere. So then I did a master's degree in between. And then I applied again and I got in. So I had about 4 gap years in between. And I started dental school last year and I graduated in 2027. Apart from that, I was born in India, but I've grown up in South Florida, near Fort Lauderdale. And I love dentistry. It was a later passion in my life, but I do love it. And I have a secret love for event planning. So I tend to get involved in my school clubs a lot and, like to help and be involved in school as much as I can. And I think that's all I can think of right now, but that's a little bit about me.
Well, that's really cool. Event planning. I'm impressed. I am not an event planner, that is for sure. I usually, on the weekends, I say to my wife, like, all right, where are we going? And she just like, tells us where we're going. So I'm very impressed. That is awesome. Okay, well, tell me a little bit more about your master's program. So that is awesome that you did a master's program. I think that is a track that more and more students are taking, or I'm seeing more frequently. Where'd you do your master's, and what do you do your master's in?
Yeah, so I actually did my master's at Nova itself, and it was the Master's of Biomedical Sciences. So it was an accelerated program. It was 1 year, 30 credits. So it was very intense, but it taught me a lot. And I think it made me the student that I am now. I don't know that I would have been as confident in dental school if I hadn't done this program. I think it just helped me develop the confidence that I kind of had lost along the way with like not getting in your first cycle, not really knowing what you want to do till the end of undergrad. Those things kind of, take away your confidence. And this master's helped bring it back. But it was 30 credits, a lot of your basic sciences. Like I had microbiology, biochemistry, but then I also got to do some cool classes like pharmacology and immunology, and mechanisms of disease, and like there was a few classes that I got to do that were really cool. And I also actually had the opportunity to take 2 classes alongside the dental students at that time. So I got to take classes in like pathology that the dental students were taking, and I was like part of their class, and it was only a few of us students from the master's program that were able to do this. So that was a cool opportunity, and I was involved in the student government in that as well. So I actually planned a formal for that. So that's where the event planning just like somehow sneaks its way in there some throughout whatever I do. But yeah, it was a great program, and I think it helped boost my application a lot. It gave me the GPA boost I needed, but it also helped me have more experiences to talk about in my applications. I was a tutor in the program, so that was something that I was able to talk about in my interviews. And of course, it gave me an insight in Nova, which helped like solidify the fact that I wanted to attend Nova Dental School. And I think that was great as well.
That's really cool. I've heard excellent things about that Nova program. I had a couple friends that took that master's program as well, and I think it sounds like just an awesome accelerated program. Get you the experience you need and get you on to the next phase of life, which is awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it did. And the faculty were amazing too, which helped a lot.
That's really cool. So you had mentioned that the Nova class, or the, excuse me, the master's program had you be able to take a couple classes with the dental students, but not everyone got that opportunity, if from what I understand, correct? So did you end up having to take those classes again when you got to dental school during your first year?
Yeah, so, that was, like, a special opportunity I got, but I did have to redo those classes, and in fact, a lot of the classes that I took in my master's program were very similar to the ones I took, again, when I started D1 year. So, like, for example, the biochemistry course I did in my master's was the same professors, almost the same curriculum that we had in dental school. So
That's
I
kind of
actually
nice.
it was really nice, but I actually, like I knew a lot of the faculty, which was really helpful. I think the hardest part about starting D1 year is, like, not knowing how the faculty would be, and I think that's an advantage I really had, which I'm forever grateful for. So that was really cool, and then a lot of the slides were the same, to be honest, like, I had notes from before that I was utilizing. So that was really cool, but then again, it's like, I did have to redo everything, and I didn't mind it because I was doing all these other things alongside that D1 year, so it's not like I was only doing that. I had a lot more going on, and it kind of just made my life a little easier because I knew some of the classes.
I can see how that would be so helpful. Oh my goodness, that would be actually like a dream. You're like, okay, I've already taken this test essentially before, which is
That's
really
basically
cool.
how it was, and I would, often be offering advice to my classmates because, like, I knew the professors and I knew the way the exam styles are, so a lot of times I felt like as if, like, I was, like, repeating the year, but in reality, I just had the leg up because I've had the same professors and the same PowerPoints, which was really cool.
That is way cool. Well, let's kind of get into the nitty gritty of what Nova's like. So you've lived through your first year. You're at the beginning of your second year so far. Walk us through what Nova's like that first year and kind of what the experience is like as a first year dental student at Nova.
I think I say this to, any incoming D1 that I talk to, but no matter what experiences I've had, I think nothing prepares you for what D1 year is really like because you're just taking so many more classes than you're ever used to, and you have a full day schedule, which a lot of people aren't used to because in college, it's very sporadic. So it's like a sudden change, and I think the hardest part about dental school is that first month because that's when you're like your first round of exams, first time meeting new faculty, first time in sim lab, first time doing all these things. And while you're really excited, a lot of times you're really overwhelmed. But I think the great part about Nova that I found was the upperclassmen, the faculty, and my classmates were so, so, so inclined to help us. Like, as hard as it was, I never felt like I was alone. Like, I was either studying with classmates from very early on, and if I wasn't comfortable, like, studying with them, I was at least talking to everyone about, like, questions I had or how people were studying. I talked to a lot of upperclassmen. Like, the first few weeks, there were so many events at our school that helped us meet upperclassmen, and I got to know people that gave me advice on different faculty. And then I also reached out to a lot of my faculty if it was, like, my first time meeting them, and I was, like, trying to, like, explain my anxieties, and they were also very welcoming and open to, like, help me. So I think that's one thing that really helped at Nova because I think D1 year is notoriously a year that everyone hates when they look back at it. But I think it really helped being surrounded by of such warm people. And the environment is just great. I think sim lab is just so much fun. Like, that's one thing that, like, no matter what classes you're taking your D1 year, like, doing sim lab is just something that, like, gets you through the week. But, yeah, Nova typically is, like, I guess your very standard D1 year, like, a lot of classes. You start sim lab with, like, wax ups like you do, I think, anywhere, and then we start operative around October, mid-October, November. So we started our handpieces pretty early, I think. And yeah, I mean, it's been a great year. If you have more specific questions, that's, like, what I can think about for my D1 year is just, like, being a lot, but then having all this like support, and that really helped.
That support is huge. I think a lot of times that support, you don't really realize going into it that you're going to need a lot of support. I mean, when you're taking, I remember my second year of dental school, I went to VCU, and I think I counted the second year we had like 35 credits in a semester, and that's just insane. That's a lot of different things to juggle all at once, and so it's just different. Like you had said, that school is it's not the same as undergrad. It's a different beast. It's a different animal, and so just kind of adjusting to that and having a good support system is really important. Does Nova have? I know some schools have, counselors. They have like vertical buddies, is what some schools call them, where you have like an upperclassman that kind of helps you, or they're assigned to you, or something along those lines. Is there like specific support that's like actually designed, or does everyone just kind of help everyone, like you had kind of mentioned?
So it's basically like an everyone helps everyone situation, but we have the fraternity called Psi O, and a lot of Psi Omega. A lot of students in our class join that. I think a majority of my class is involved, and they basically do like a big little program, and then clubs like ASDA or like a lot of the clubs reach out and they basically have ways for you to like meet the upperclassmen. And then our student government of the upper class always does like a survival guide for
Oh,
each
nice.
new year and each new semester as well. So every new semester, the upperclassmen will do a survival guide for like how to get through each class, just in general, like tips, advice that they have for every class and just in general that semester. So that was really helpful. And I think the best way to meet people is just like being around campus. Like everyone's looking to help. All the upperclassmen like come to us and be like, ask us questions, like tell us what we can help you with. So I think that was really helpful. Um, and in terms of faculty, I think Nova's like during orientation, they made it very clear that we're an open door policy. So all faculty are always available. If they're in their office, you're always welcome to walk in and ask any questions you have. I've personally met up with the dean sometimes just because like I felt a little overwhelmed. I went to my academic dean, and I just in general faculty like professors too. Like you can always reach out to anyone; they're always willing to help.
That is excellent. So going back to sim lab in your first year, that's always a really fun time because it's like this is what we came here for, and it's really exciting to get your handpiece and get your lubes and kind of rocking and rolling with that. Walk us through. It's very typical, I would assume, from school to school, what that first year looks like in terms of the different things and procedures you learn, whether it's crowns, fillings, and kind of the different things that you learn in that first year sim lab.
Of course. So first year sim lab is very focused on dental anatomy and focused on operative and restorative. So in our first, like I think 2 months of school, we're focused all on dental anatomy, doing our wax ups and perfecting all the different things we need to know about each tooth and knowing the anatomy of each tooth. And then slowly we progress into doing operative while also learning occlusion for our anatomy. So we're doing a bit of wax ups our second half of the semester, and we're also wax ups in occlusion, and we're also doing our operative and restorative hand pieces. Like we start off on a little block, then we start our class ones, class twos, class threes, etc. And then by second semester, we're only doing operative and restorative. So we are strictly doing the different class preps. We're learning new methods at Nova. We're really big on digital dentistry. So we start
Nice.
learning digital dentistry from early on, including D1 year. So we've had a few classes throughout D1 year where we learn about digital dentistry and lecture. And then we've also had a chance to scan like typodont teeth and learn like how that works. And even I think we designed an inlay this last semester. So we do a lot
Whoa.
of that. Yeah, like, just I mean, we, like, had one design, and then we, like, learned how we would, like, adjust the margins and, like, like, we
Huh.
worked on it, like, how to modify it and things like that. So, Nova's really big on digital dentistry, and they try to incorporate it into the curriculum very early on. And other than that, D1 year, we also do a little bit of like preview into how our boards will be for restorative. So like we've drilled on like caries teeth and learned like how like generally like on the boards like you have to ask for modifications and all that, and we learn like how to do that. So I think this first year was very heavy on restorative, and now this year we start pros removable, we start endo. So like during the summer, we've done like in our endo sim lab, and we're going to start crown preps and stuff more. We've done one or two crown preps, but that's more heavily done in starting D2 year.
That's awesome. I'm really intrigued by the digital dentistry. That's really cool that, I mean, I had some digital dentistry exposure in school and we did some crowns, but not inlays because inlays are a little bit of a different animal, which is kind of neat. What other digital dentistry components do they have incorporated into the curriculum as you kind of go through your second, third, and fourth year?
So it's very big at Nova in the point that like I know our faculty in digital dentistry is always trying to get it even more involved. So from scanning patients, like every patient that comes, like they try to scan digital and like alginate impressions. They try to do both. They do a lot of crown preps using that. I know that. I think they're implementing it for dentures as well. I'm not sure if that's already been implemented, but I know that's something that the class above us was saying that in the next 1 or 2 years that they would be doing strictly digital dentures. So I think it's more of like we're at that phase where it's like they're going fast with it. They want to incorporate digital dentistry into every class that they can. It's just about like maybe it might take a little time, but I think, you know, like D1 year, we just learned how to do like CAD CAM, like what the software is like what digital dentistry even is. And now we're going to start implementing it into our curriculum and they use it a lot in clinic as well. And like I think D3 year they have like a milling course where they learn how to like mill the crowns with the CAD CAM software. So it's like very integrated. And I think in the next 2 or 3 years it'll be even more like thoroughly integrated into the curriculum.
That's really cool. I think that is something that I would definitely take advantage of because that's where dentistry is moving. Um, so that's really
That was
neat.
one of the things that like pushed me a little more towards Nova because I always heard that they like were going forward with digital dentistry and like seeing it myself, I think was really cool as well.
That's cool. So on that, man, we'll kind of come back to the school stuff in a second, but that just sparked a question. What are some of the things that drew you towards Nova initially? So digital dentistry was one of them. What were some of the other things that drew you towards Nova or over other schools?
So I think the first one is I'm actually locally from South Florida, so
There.
Nova is home for me. I actually live at home, which is great. You know, I have the comfort of my family and living like 20 minutes away from school, but having like my own home here. So that's really great. I also love the faculty. As I mentioned, I did the master's there. And prior to doing the master's, I was always like, wherever I get into school, that's where I want to go. But when I did the master's, I realized that Nova really cares about their students and the faculty. Like a lot of schools I know, like they want you to like read the entire textbook. They want you to like they try to trick you with questions. They don't really try to like help you as much. And that's something that in my master's program I learned that Nova is really giving you all the resources you need to excel, and you just have to take it and go. And you're always welcome to use additional resources. Obviously, like reading the textbook is always encouraged, but it's not something where like other schools where that's like if you like, you know, they're finding a trick question from the textbook that you've never read. So I think
Yeah.
that was one thing that I really liked, that the faculty are there to help you. They're there to like guide you. They're not like as strict about like whether you're attending every single one of your science classes. They're more of like, how are you doing in them? Are you focusing on studying? They know that everyone studies differently. And I really like that like level of support I felt from faculty back in the masters. And that pushed me to apply to Nova further. And, apart from that, it's just, you know, I've seen the sim lab, it's very modern, like, I know that it's and I've heard great things about the Nova School. I knew that it was a very, like, supportive environment with the upperclassmen. So I've just heard great things, and then I witnessed some of it in my master's, and I just knew that this is where I would, like, wanna end up.
That's really cool. So kind of jumping back to the school side of things, during your clinical years, what does that kind of look like? Are you in clinic 5 days a week, 4 days a week as a third and fourth year? And what is kind of some of the mix of procedures? Of course, you're going to be doing fillings and crowns, but are you able to do some specialty procedures as well, like molar endo or place an implant or two? What does that kind of look like once you kind of move on to the clinical side of things?
Of course. I will preface by saying that I don't know everything about clinic yet because that's still something that I'm gonna be learning this year more than I have in the past year. But from everything that I've heard, Nova does have specialty programs at Nova. So one cool thing is that, like, if you ever want to learn more procedures, you're always welcome to go and observe any of the specialties. We have, I think, all specialties in-house. So you're welcome to go shadow and observe and, like, ask questions. Like, I've personally gone to the AGD clinic to learn, a little more information about some of the, um, like how like a class 2 is done back in like as a D1, like, seeing that in person. Like complicated procedures or sometimes you can observe them there. But students do get a chance to do a lot of clinical work. And I know that, like, I think we were talking in our endo class that like Nova does do, like, they went to a conference, the faculty went to a conference and they were like, you students always get to do a lot more than we've heard some of students in other schools do. So I know that students always are doing perio, they're doing crown, they're doing restorations, they're doing endo, they're doing oral surgery. So I know that there's a lot offered and there's a lot of rotations that let you observe different areas that you may not get to do if you weren't in a rotation. But apart from that, I know you're there 5 days a week, 8 to 5, and we also have evening clinic on some days, but it also just depends on your schedule and how you've scheduled patients. Because D3 year, you are taking exams as well, so you're kind of building your schedule as you see fit, as the patient's schedule allows. Some faculty, depending on your team leader, some faculty are more strict about you, like attendance being there 8 to 5 every single day, and some are more like, as long as you're meeting your requirements of the week, you're fine. So I think that depends on which team lead you're part of. Also, like, all the procedures you're doing will also depend as a D3 on like what D4, like, each D3 gets assigned a D4. So what your D4 is like finished with their requirements, they're going to hand you down the other things, and like what they may need still, you're not going to get that yet. So it just depends on like who you're paired with, and that's a lot of research the students do before they pick their clinic years as well. And it depends on person to person preference.
Yeah, totally. So you had mentioned that you guys have weekly requirements. Is that what you said in clinic? I know you're not there yet, but from what you understand, is that kind of how it works
I think it's more of like semester requirements that like faculty are making sure that you're like, they're
progressing
setting
week
up
to
like
week?
weekly, yeah. Like,
Gotcha.
as long as you're meeting their requirements every like week or other 2 weeks, that's more, I think, on the faculty on how they do it. I know I've heard of some team leaders who are like, they want updates every single day from every single student, and
Oh,
some that are
whoa.
like, yeah, so then some that are like, okay, we're gonna do a once a meeting thing or once a week thing, or some that will do like every other week. So I think that's based off like which faculty you want, what type of guidance you prefer. But ultimately, it's just your semester requirements that you have to meet, and there's like kind of, I guess, checkpoints along the way that you're making sure that you're not falling behind.
Oh, that's great. So when you had mentioned as well that rotations are a big component, and I think that's something that almost every school requires in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of times there are in-house rotations and then external rotations that often D4s get to do, where they're out in the community. Do you guys have that? And how many weeks does that typically look like for a D4 that goes on an external rotation?
I know we definitely do. There's a few external like I've had some D4s that I talked to. Someone went to like Boston to do an external like rotation. Some people have. We have a local clinic. It's called Cypress, and a lot of our students go there as well. I think that's a requirement for everyone, but a lot of times students will choose to do that additionally. So there are opportunities to go externally to do rotations. I believe they're 4 to 6 week rotations, but that's something that I am not fully aware of right now. So I can get back to you with that answer. But yeah, there's a lot of room. Like, our students, like, Nova really wants you to go out in the community and serve. So, students are always finding those ways to like get involved and go to like different rotations. And as I mentioned, we have all the specialties in house. So if you ever want to do a rotation with a specialty, that's always an option you can do. Or sometimes like oral, like surgery, like oral medicine, like they'll do their rotations with students to like show extractions and things like that. So we have the support of the specialties, which really helps. And I think all the external opportunities are dependent on how much a student wants to take on.
That's great. That's awesome. All right. Well, let's talk about more of some of the fun stuff that is
Okay.
involved with dental school. That's enough about the kind of the nitty-gritty about how school is on just a day-to-day kind of grind. Sounds like
Mhm.
Nova has an excellent culture, but in terms of let's kind of just hit one that I think I get a lot from our students is like, hey, is the campus in a safe location? Is it a place where you'd want to live? And obviously, you live there, so it's probably safe. But kind of give us your opinion on the location of the school. Do you feel comfortable walking to school once you park your car? And what does that look like for the students that kind of live a little bit closer to campus?
Of course. So Nova is a extremely safe area because Nova is not just Nova Dental School. Nova is a bunch of other health professional schools. We have our whole area of the school is called Health Professions Division. So we have medicine, optometry, PA, physical therapy. So all the health professions are there. And that's the school that you're in, and that's the area that you're in. But we also have a main campus, which is our undergrad. And we also actually have a K through 12 private school in the
What?
Nova, like, yeah, campus. So it's not necessarily like I'm not going to run into a kindergartner on my way to classes or anything because our building is like completely separate. But we do have a whole school there. So all of that being said, that area is very safe, and we also have, like, a lot of colleges who have their, like, additional campuses, like, their annex campuses at the, like, backside of Nova. So that whole area is like an educational center, for multiple schools from, like, even there's a few high schools there around the corner. There's a few, private campus like, private schools on like, Nova campus itself. So that whole area is very safe, and you have a lot of neighborhoods in that area where I know a lot of my classmates that walk to school, they scooter to school, they bike to school. It's like very easy to live near Nova and feel safe. And you have a whole plaza of like great restaurants, and like Costco's right there, and there's a mall around the corner. So that whole area is great. You're like 15 minutes away from the airport, from the beach. So it's like a great area to be in. And I think if you're living beyond that, then, like, obviously different areas can be, different levels of safeness, but generally, if you're living near Nova, it's very safe, and even the vicinities around Nova are very safe as well.
That's great. So one of the things that drove me nuts about my school is we had to pay for parking, and it was kind of like an exorbitant fee. Now every school is different. Some charge, some don't charge, some aren't very expensive. Does Nova charge for your guys' parking?
No, Nova parking is free.
Heck yeah, that is awesome. That's one of
So
those things where it's like, man, I really wish I would have considered that. Like, it's not like going to make or break your decision on where you go, but I mean, it is a nice little perk to have a place that's not going to nickel and dime you for little things like that.
no,
Um,
definitely, it's free parking, we love it.
oh, that is so great. In terms of nickeling and diming as well, do you pay for SimLab teeth? Or
Yeah, yes and no. You're given enough to do your projects, you're given enough to practice your projects, but if you're someone who is like practicing every single day, or if you're someone who's really going in SimLab and like spending a lot of time practicing, you're definitely going to be buying teeth. And luckily we have like a store right on the third floor. And part of our D1 like fee that we pay is a $200 credit that goes towards like
oh, okay.
buying, like you just go up, you say what you want, and they like deduct it from your $200. So you paid for it, but it's kind of like in credit. It's part of your like instrument fees that you pay. So I till now have not run out of my 200. I still have money left. So that can kind of
Great.
give you an insight that like my whole D1 year, like I was not one that was like practicing like constantly, but I had enough that I was practicing enough. I was doing well, but I was also like I still have money left over to buy like in the future whatever I want. So you're paying for teeth, but you also are given a good amount.
That's great. Does that credit roll over from year to year if you don't use
Mhm.
it?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
that is good.
it's basically like right now until I run out, I that's $200 going to be with me in my like account.
Well, that's kind of nice. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um, Another question. Does your school have a school gym that's either attached to the dental school or on the Nova campus that's close by that a lot of the students use?
Yeah, so it's not in the dental school, but it is in the main campus, and the main campus is like right there. It's like we're not separate from our main campus. We're in the same area. It's just a different building. But the main campus does have a gym. They have a rec center. They have like a nice cafeteria. They have all these things. And there is a cafeteria in our health professions division area as well. But the one on the main campus is a little nicer, if I say so myself.
Yeah. What's the housing situation like? You had mentioned that there's a lot of students that live really close to campus and they either bike or scooter or walk to school. Um, so in terms of like the housing, do a lot of students live together? What's the cost typically like for like a typical two bedroom, two bath or something along that? If you know, I know you live at home, which is probably a little bit of a different case scenario. You're probably like, I don't have to deal with that as much, which is nice. But from
Yeah.
what you hear from your classmates, what is that typically like?
Yeah, so I like you've mentioned, I don't pay rent, so I don't know. But a lot of students do live in that vicinity, and some of the places are literally like right across the street. So I have someone who like a few people actually who live in the community where you just cross a light and you're at school, and it's a very like small little light. So it literally like you can reach school in less than 5 minutes. And there's other areas in that vicinity that like aren't as close, but they're close enough that it's like a 5-minute car ride or less than that. I think I'm hearing about 2,000 for 2 bedrooms, a little bit give or take, like, probably. So I don't know how much, like, depending, I guess, like, how much each roommate is paying and things like that. But most people are in, like, 2 bedrooms, I think, like, most people have 2 roommates or, like, themselves and one roommate. And a lot of people do live with our dental school classmates, but some people actually live with like the med students or like the optometry students. Some people live with like the master's students. So it's like you find like a Nova student to live with basically, and usually it's someone within health professions. But we have a decent amount of our class that live together.
It's really cool. I think it kind of is a neat opportunity to build camaraderie with each other
Definitely.
that way, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So this is kind of going back a little bit to the school aspect, but what are some unique things you feel like Nova has to offer as a school or as a community in that area? You kind of alluded to a few already, but anything else that you kind of would want to add to that?
Yeah, I think I've touched base on a few of them. I think all dental schools are going to have their own experience, but I think something that is really cool about Nova is we do have all these health professions in the same building. And sometimes, like through our events on campus, like there's always ways to interact with them. But I think I've just really loved the community I built. The clubs I feel like are so well done at Nova. I'm not sure how other schools have it, but like I'm pretty involved in my school and I'm part of a few clubs and like for example, we have a cosmetic society and they bring in speakers from like around the country to speak to us. Like
Wow,
really like Instagram popular dentist and I've gotten to hear some really inspirational stories. I think our like ASDA is like very involved in our district ASDA. Like we are, I think, a very involved school when it comes to our extracurriculars. We have a really big Give Kids a Smile that brings in, I think this year we brought in about like 300 patients. And I was part of the board that helped plan that. And that was really cool to see like how the whole school comes together for this event. And I think on top of that, like our faculty are always trying to find new techniques and new resources to teach us. Like we always have like random trainings from different companies that are like trying to show like, like like injection molding, like something like, like we may not be doing that in clinic yet, but there are a lot of things that they're always trying to teach us what the newest of dentistry is. And I think I see the dedication that they have for like our growth and our betterment as dentists. And I think every school comes with, their pros and cons list, and wherever you end up is usually what works for you. But I think Nova's really been a great fit for me, and I always find that I'm happy where I am.
that's really cool. I think there are a lot of schools that are a little bit more old school. They're not as progressive potentially in terms of techniques. And so that's neat to hear that Nova is really trying to push like, hey, we just want to make you aware of this new technique that's out there. We may not be teaching it necessarily, but it's out there and it's something to look into
Exactly.
when you graduate, which is kind of cool.
I I love that, and I think that's where it shows that this is beyond just dental school. This is them talking to like, future dentists in the profession. They wanna make sure everyone knows all the great things that are available out there, and I really love that.
That is great. Now, we're going to go back to kind of the fun things to do in the community. Obviously, you live close to the beach. That's fun. You live in South Florida. It's got beautiful weather, like 95% of the year, probably. What are some things that the dental students kind of do together, or common places you guys congregate either on the weekends or kind of when you guys have breaks? What do students typically enjoy doing in the surrounding area?
Yeah, so I think the beach is often a popular spot because it is so close to our campus and it's beautiful. We've done like a boat day through like that was like our end of the year activity that we did. We all like got like 2 boats and we just went like a bunch of us went on a boat and like chilled for a few hours. There's Fort Lauderdale, downtown Fort Lauderdale has some really nice places that students find themselves going to, great restaurants or great bars. There's I wanna say a lot to do near Miami as well, but that is a bit of a drive, but I think students make their way there when like, if you find people to go with or if you find something to do. But I feel like there's enough to do in the area that you are always, like, finding time to spend with your friends there. I think whether it's you're going to restaurants, which there's a lot of great restaurants around us, or, I think the beach is a popular spot, and I think for longer, like, more fun experiences, people find themselves going to Miami, I think, and I'm trying to think. I feel like we've spent so much time studying that it's like, what are the fun things we did? It's like you
Yeah.
forget that sometimes.
Yeah, it's like I'm so stuck in the grind. I'm the same way of like when you go back to work or back to school and you're like, I don't even remember what I did this past weekend. Like, what the heck did we
Exactly,
even do? So,
exactly.
well, it sounds
And
like there's
right
a.
now
Oh, go for it.
sorry.
Sorry.
No, I'm saying right now is that 5% of the time where in Florida weather is not the best because it's so hot and so humid, and I think right now we all find ourselves doing indoor activities as much as we can.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Arizona where it's like, okay, it's like 115 outside. Let's just kind of go inside now.
It's
So
too hot.
it's too hot. Well, let's kind of segue into some pre-dental advice. So a lot
Okay.
of our listeners are pre-dental students and they love to kind of understand what they need to do to either get into Nova or get into any school in general and what schools are looking for. So from your experience, you have a little bit of an awesome experience in the fact that you've been able to apply, didn't get in, did a master's program, got into the school that you wanted to go to. Tell us a little bit about what you would recommend since you've had to reapply. Um, what you would recommend in terms of what are some key things that dental schools are looking for on an application?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because we want I think all the pre-dental students want an answer that is like, "This is what I have to do and this will happen." And I
Mhm.
think that's the hardest part about pre-dental advice is because it's not that straightforward, but
Not
I
that cut and
will
dry.
it's not, unfortunately. But I will say to anyone listening that, like, don't lose hope. If you're someone like me who's applied more than once or if you found your calling later in life or, you know, if your GPA is not where you want it to be, I think the one thing is don't lose hope. Like, I think at the end of the day, like, if you have the passion for dentistry, if you have done your due diligence, if you've done all, like, checked all the boxes that you need to check, like, you know, just show them who you are. Really spend time making sure that you've taken care of the different aspects of your application, but then, like, trust that, like, things will work out because it's very easy to get caught up in the anxieties of like, "Oh, like, let me check who else got interviews," or "Let me check where when Nova sent out their first interview and why didn't I get anything?" But the more you wrap yourself around that, the more intense this process feels. It would be much better to, like, try to just do your due diligence and go from there. That's something that I learned along the way because when I didn't get in the first time, I was pretty disappointed even though I knew I didn't have a high chance because I knew my GPA wasn't the best, but I did have a good DAT score and I had good involvement. So I said, let me just try my luck. And I knew that it wasn't going to be the best shot for me, but I still was very, very upset when I didn't get in. So it obviously comes with the territory. If you're applying, you want to get in. But then things worked out for me. And I think honestly, like the journey that I'm on now for dentistry is probably 10 times better than what it would have been if I got in the first time. And I think some of the, I guess, nitty gritty things that I know students are looking to hear is show yourself if you're a reapplicant like myself, really make sure to talk about the things that changed from your application cycle the last time to the like new application cycle. So don't just say, "Oh, my grades went up," or "I got a better DAT score." Talk about how you improved as a person. Talk about what else you learned about dentistry that made you more in love with this profession. Change your personal statement a little bit. I know that your story of why dentistry may not have changed, but the journey that you're on has changed, and you should definitely focus on that. And I think one thing that I always say is talk about what changed, and that's important. And for anyone that's not like reapplying, the same thing kind of applies, and like show yourself through your application. Like these people that are reading the applications, they are just reading words. They can't put a face to this application yet. So you really have to show them your story, tell them your passion. Don't just write what you think they want to hear, write about yourself. Tell your story. Be honest, be vulnerable, and it, they'll see through that. They can see the answers that are like, you maybe use ChatGPT to help you like come up with something versus you used your heart to like write something. They can see through it. So just be yourself and give it your all, but don't let it take over.
I
That's a
love that.
lot of words that I don't know if they got through the way I wanted them to.
No, I think they did, and I think I loved what you said about reapplying and making a change in your application. I think there's a temptation because the application can be very daunting in terms of the essays and like the amount of time it takes to put in to just copy and paste if you're a reapplicant to go from one year to the next. But by changing the personal statement, by really emphasizing what you did different and how you are a different person is huge because that's what they're looking for. They want to see that you're a different person than the last time you applied, not the same.
Exactly. They know that like even if it's just the numbers on your application that weren't right the first time you applied, at the end of the day, when you reapply, they want to see like, are you ready for dental school? Are you ready for the rigors that are coming your way? And you know, like it comes with more than just your numbers. Like, yeah, it comes from, I'm sure the confidence in my application was much better the second time around. I'm sure my personal statement, and I think even the people I showed my personal statement to, I think the second time around people were much like they responded much better than they did the first time around for my statement. So these things make a difference and you don't realize them when you're starting. You think that, oh, like mine was great the first time. I thought my personal statement was amazing the first time. But then when I started reworking it and I rewrote it, then when I read the first one, I'm like, what did I even write?
Yeah,
It's always can do better. And just you have to show them that you are a different person now.
I love that. So in terms of
Yeah.
Nova's interview is probably structured somewhat similar to other dental schools. What is that interview process like? What are some of the questions that they asked you in your interview?
I actually loved Nova's interview. I had the opportunity to do a few more, but I loved Nova's because it was very conversational. And I think anyone you hear or if anyone you talk to will probably say a very similar story. And I know it's hard to believe because when I heard that before my interview, I was like, I doubt that. But honestly, they were just trying to get to know me. They have your application in front of you. So they're not really looking to, they're not looking for you to regurgitate your application as much but to like fill it in, like what else can you tell me about this. Some questions I got asked is like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Then it was like, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? They asked me why I wanted to go to Nova. They asked me why I chose the path of dentistry. Those are very common interview questions usually. I think a unique one that I got from Nova was, what is a word your friends would use to describe you? And I think that's one that I like wasn't necessarily prepared for. So I that one like still it's not a hard question, it's just one that I wasn't expecting. Um but other than that, on top, like it was more of like just talking about like for me, I did have that non-traditional path. So they talked to me about what changed. Like they saw it, they saw that my grades changed. And they wanted to know like what sparked that. And I think that I just felt like I was talking to someone who wanted to get to know me, and then when I asked questions at the end about just, the questions I asked about the school and I asked about, I was always involved in academia. So I wanted to get his input on like how to get involved with academia at Nova. And the answers that I got were more of like that. At that point, we were just talking. Like I was just
Mm.
talking to someone like as if I was talking to a professor of mine. Like it didn't feel like an interview at that point. And the interviews can go on from anywhere to like 15 to 30 minutes depending on like how much you're talking. I know some people that I've heard like they just talked about baseball the entire time, or like they just talked about like nothing dental related the entire time, because the interview at Nova, they're really just trying to get to know you as a person. And apart from the interview portion, it is a like 4 hour ordeal, and you have a school from the dean. You get lunch. You get a tour of the sim lab of the school, the library, and then you get a little time with two dental students that you get to talk to and ask them questions. And there's the one that take you on the tour, so you can always ask them questions during that as well. And that was a great opportunity because I got to ask some like more, fun questions to them. So I think it was a great experience overall.
I love it. That is great. I
Mm.
think the conversational aspect is something I really like that schools do. Not all the schools do it, as I'm sure you've experienced,
Yeah,
but when someone just really takes the time to get to know you, there's a better connection. And I think schools at that point when they're interviewing anyway, they already know if they like you on paper. They're just trying to
yeah,
see if you're going to be a good fit person wise at the school for the culture.
exactly.
So I love it.
And I think that's what helps create this like very friendly environment at Nova. And I think it's because like everyone they are interviewing for their interviews, they're just trying to see like, are you a fun person to talk to? So I think that's what helps create this environment at Nova.
Totally. Well, any final pieces of advice, Simran, for pre-dental students or people that are looking to come to Nova?
Um, Honestly, I think just trust your journey, do your best, and reach out to dental students, reach out to people that have gone through the process. They want to help you. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available to talk to students. I have a little Instagram account that I'm sure when this is shared, like you'll see it. But it's just one of those things that I feel like you get scared to talk to dental students because you think that like, they may not want to help, but I feel like any dental student I talk to, they always want to help because they know what it's like. They've been through that process. Everyone went through that fear and anxiety of application. So we all want to help and we want to give back. So don't be afraid to reach out, talk to people, talk to like don't just rely on like talking to your advisors. You should always get advice from them, but reach out to the students who have been through it, and don't give up. Like, really just don't give up. I think that's, like, very easily said than done, but don't give up. Like, things will work out.
I love it. That is excellent. Well, Simran, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We've really enjoyed having you on. I think you've kind of done an excellent job of sharing from your heart of what things you would do if you were to do it again, and the wonderful things at Nova. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a true pleasure.
Awesome. Well, that is it for today's episode of the Dental School Guide podcast, and we will catch y'all. That's all for today's episode of the Dental School Guide podcast. We hope you've gained valuable insights and inspiration to fuel your journey into dentistry. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more expert advice, inside tips, and engaging discussions. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. It would mean the world to us. Until next time, keep smiling, keep striving, and remember, your dental dreams are closer than you think. Thanks for tuning in to the Dental School Guide podcast.